Hey yo guys, I'm back here to give you another installment of Down and Dirty with the Dirty White Boy, my question and answer show. Gotta say, got a lot of good questions from you guys. I'm really happy to see that, and it was a nice variety of pro wrestling, mixed martial arts, and boxing. Always love that. As always, you can send questions to my YouTube inbox as well as the email account, and may as well, since I've got some questions from my MySpace that will be used for the next episode. Don't know when that will be, but anyways, before I get into the Q&A finally, I just want to say, on the last Q&A I mentioned if you wanted to, talk to me on AIM, send your account and I would add you because you would know it was me, but some people didn't understand that. But still, if you want to talk to me on those things, you can. I'm on MSN and AIM quite a lot. Need more for AIM, but I like, a wide variety of people, not just to talk pro wrestling. I love doing that, but I like to talk, boxing, MMA, what have you. Anyways, let's get into the Q&A. Got a real bunch of strong questions here. So we start out here with, in the 1994 Royal Rumble, the finish was supposed to be Luger winning, but they changed it. Why was this? Well, see, this is a really good question. This is a thing, a lot of debate. The story here was, yes, Luger was supposed to win the Rumble. He was for sure going to win, take on, I believe, the story that I have was supposed to go like this. 1994's WrestleMania 10. It was supposed to be, the main event was supposed to be Lex Luger and Ludwig Borga. Yeah, if you can believe it was supposed to be Luger finally ending the streak of Borga at Mania, that's how things happen. But plans get changed as Ludwig Borga, Tony Holm, has a severe ankle injury and he's out, and eventually he leaves the company due to the severity of this ankle injury. Borga was supposed to win the title, defeating The Undertaker, who was supposed to beat Yokozuna in this casket match. Yoko was supposed to get time off to drop some weight, and Luger would go on to win the Rumble as they had Bret Hart versus Owen Hart set up for Mania. That would have been the big match there. But the fans never got into Luger, as, a lot of the fans with, the WWF, they just jam people down their throats. And this is a case here with Lex Luger. So much to the point that in the match in the Rumble match, when they had, they did those kind of injury angles where, the Great Kabuki and Tenryu beat down Luger, and, Bret Hart had that whole knee injury angle to set up his match eventually with Owen Hart. Well, when Bret got out there, the fans absolutely marked out, they popped more for Bret, and Vince McMahon, the man he is, always likes to change things. He noticed that the fans were more into Bret than Luger. So that's why, they got word, they rated, hey, we're going to change the finish here to both guys winning, just to, officially determine who's going to get the belt. So they changed things that way, and, they noticed that when, they were also in the hand-raising thing, you can tell the fans, they're like, yay, ooh, Luger wins, but they explode when they find out Bret wins, because I don't know, Bret had this more, appeal to him more so than Luger, than who they were building up this all-American guy, what have you. I don't know, maybe the lust of the allure from Luger got lost when, he lost the championship match when they built him up so much for SummerSlam 93. I don't know, but that's why they changed the finish, because Bret was getting more over than Luger. They changed the finish to that, and eventually Bret wins the title by beating Yoko. So that's the whole story there. Anyways, the next question is, in your opinion, why didn't the XFL succeed, and what could have made it better? Well, the XFL, we all know, is the brainchild of Vince McMahon and NBC executive producer Dick Ebersol, who, Vince and Ebersol go way back to, their days with Saturday Night Main Event, which was one of the most successful shows for the WWF and the NBC network. So that's one reason why the thing got launched, and, it's also the marketing genius there, Vince, as he wanted to, change something, much like Vince always wants to branch off into other things. If you remember in 1992, he created the WBF, the World Bodybuilding Federation, which is absolutely insane that they put on 2 pay-per-views and expected people to pay to see men pose. If pro wrestling wasn't homo enough, gets homo jokes enough, Vince created the WBF. But anyways, I'm kind of jumping off track here. So, the XFL, why didn't it work? Well, you see, it didn't work because the networks is a key thing. The 3 networks that were part of this deal, NBC, which got, the very first game, and there was Spike and TNN. I'm sorry, it was TNN and UPN. Really the thing was the XFL started off hot, you know, they got pretty good ratings, you know, they were, you know, kind of primetime-ish ratings, but the thing was UPN, eventually as the rating, as the, you know, the intrigue of the XFL started to decline, UPN wanted the games to be afternoon games. But Vince, you know, working with UPN, you know, since he helped really elevate UPN's status, he didn't want to do that. You know, UPN was then backing out of the project. Vince couldn't have that. That's one reason the league folded. Also, you know, the XFL did not work because it had too much pro wrestling in it. I mean, you know, with the names on the back of the jersey and, you know, the fact that we had so many pro wrestlers on the show. You know, you had, you know, Undertaker, Rock, Austin, Triple H, what have you. They would cutting frickin' promos on the show. That didn't work at all. And the cheerleaders, you know, that was an aspect of it. But to me, I thought the XFL was a strong league. You know, a lot of guys from there eventually wanted to have, you know, strong careers in the NFL or the CFL. You know, Tommy Maddox is the most successful from there, who was quarterback of the Los Angeles Extreme. You know, that team was the first and only team to win the XFL $1 million game, is what that was called. I mean, you know, they had Jermain Copeland. He was on the Los Angeles Extreme, who plays now in the CFL with the Calgary Stampeders. Jimmy the Jet Cunningham was on there. He was a CFL player who really, after the XFL, when he played for the San Francisco Demons, his career diminished. That's really, you know, why it didn't work. What would have made it better? Less of the pro wrestling aspect. If Vince could somehow have separated, which, you know, it's really impossible. You know, the name Vince McMahon is attached to a league. You know, if he could have somehow separated the pro wrestling and the games, and then the XFL to live on its own, maybe it would have had a chance. But the XFL never got. I mean, another thing with the XFL is people thought all the games were worked. Now, this is not known to be proven, what have you, but still, I think, you know, the league was a fun league. I mean, let's just put it that way. I mean, you know, with the ball in the center instead of a coin toss, the overtime system was awesome. I think that's what the NFL should do. You know, they do it in the NCAA, they do it in the CFL, they do it in the AFL, the Arena Football League of, you know, you go down, if you field goal, you score a touchdown, what have you, though then your team's defense then has to, you know, protect the house. I mean, that's fair enough. I like that aspect. The no pat return, the no pat rule, I liked that. It was just an exciting league. I just thought, you know, there was a chance for it to work. You know, it had, you know, the marketing genius of there, but there was just so much WWF pro wrestling included that the league was doomed to fail in that aspect. Plus the networks, and like anything, if a network wants to back out, that thing's going to be doomed. Anyways, thanks for those questions. Those are some fun stuff to talk about. Anyways, next question is, since pro wrestling takes a lot of their gimmicks and ideas from pop culture, such as the Honky Tonk Man as Elvis, John Morrison as Jim Morrison, what do you think of a Michael Jackson type gimmick? I think down the line we could get one, but my biggest fear is, I think Michael Jackson's, you really can't do a Michael Jackson gimmick, because Michael Jackson more now is known as a pedophile. And, you know, WWE or TNA or what have you, you know, the mainstream companies here in North America, they would not touch this gimmick, because that's what you would have to play it off of. And that's just so many lines in the realms of pro wrestling that it's not even funny. You're too far back to know about the dancing, you know, the good music, Michael Jackson gimmick, especially for the audience you're marketing to now. I mean, how the WWF learned from this when they had the new rockers of Marty Jannetty and Al Snow, and he was Leif Cassidy, basically be, you know, David Cassidy, and, you know, part of the Party family. I mean, that was a reference for kids who were growing up in the 90s about a show that's on in the 70s. There was a 2-decade generation gap in there that they are not going to understand, and that's going to hurt a lot. And that's why I don't think you can do this, because I think there's a potential of it, but you're going to have to touch weird topics that I don't know if it would work. You know, I think, you know, probably you'll see one in like a CZW or you know, if XPW were around, or a WSX, something like that. You could have potentially seen a gimmick like that, but I don't think so in that aspect. And, you know, that's just my thoughts. I don't think we could see a Michael Jackson gimmick per se. Other musicians, other controversial musicians, probably, like, you know, an MC Hammer, where you have some balling guy who they find out bankrupt, yeah, probably something like that. I mean, that's easy to explain, and there's nothing really, you know, iffy to touch there. But, you know, Michael Jackson with the child molestation issues, that's too tough to get into. So I don't think any company really wants to touch angle where they have a wrestler who likes to feel up little boys and girls. So that's just my opinion. Next question. I was just wondering, ROH Tag Team is better and why? Kevin Steen and El Generico or the Briscoes? Thanks for asking my question. Well, in the history of Ring of Honor, it's going to be the Briscoes. I mean, they're a born-bred team. Excellent matches. Extra, tag team chemistry. They are brothers. They got to work together well. And I think it's that brother aspect well. But, right now, to me, Kevin Steen and El Generico are working so well together. They add that comedy variety to it, but plus, they can be serious and badasses, and they go out there and, take these insane bumps. Same with the Briscoes, but overall, I guess, better. I don't know. That's a tough question, but right now, I would say I'll just say what I said before. Right now, I'll take Kevin Steen and El Generico as, the insane high spots and what have you is really taking a toll on Mark Briscoe's body, as he's been out. He was out a lot of 2008 and he's still out now in 2009. But overall in the history of the company, I mean, they're the most successful team, the most over team in the history of the company, Briscoe brothers. So overall in the history, I take the Briscoe brothers. Next question is, I've not heard a lot about who will be on the card of UFC 100, but I have my own dream card, which leads me to this question. What fight or fights would you like to see at the big UFC 100 show? Interesting note about UFC 100. This is actually not the 100th UFC show. This is actually the 132nd show. UFC 78 was the very first show, because you have to take into consideration that when the UFC first started, they did events known as the Ultimate of whatever, Ultimate Japan, Ultimate Brazil, or Ultimate, the Ultimate, to find, the true Ultimate Fighter, whatever, and that just threw some of the numbers off, what have you. But anyways, the only fight for sure I know that is on the card is Thiago the Pitbull Alves will take on George Rush St. Pierre, I should say, for the UFC Welterweight Championship. Really, I don't know. I mean, I think that's just, unfair. I think I have to see how some of the things play off of. One fight, though, I guess that would be interesting to see, since, these were the two of the main stars at the beginning of the UFC. I mean, it's eventually going to happen down the line, especially with this past weekend's, horrible show of gods. And that would be Ken Shamrock versus Tank Abbott. Yeah, the fight would be sad, such a sad state, but I think it would be interesting if they could, I don't think they ever will, because Ken has this issue with the UFC. I believe he has a lawsuit with them. Tank versus Ken, I mean, two of the biggest stars. I mean, Ken was this, just below Royce Gracie in, overness. And, Tank was just, the first, true badass to come out of them. So I think that would be an interesting fight. But really, I have to see, how some other stuff plays off. If they could get, Tank in there again, maybe that would be interesting. Maybe getting Dan Severn on this card. I mean, some of the original pioneers and some of the new stars, but I don't think we're going to get anything like that aspect. But the only thing I do know is the UFC Welterweight Championship between St. Pierre and Alves. So that's, unfortunately, I can't think of anything Dream. I think Dream is always a little hard for me, as there's so much thought in, in the Q&A. It's tough. Next question is, does Dell versus Shogun make any sense right now? Shogun does not look the same as Shogun he did in Pride, so do you feel UFC is throwing Shogun to the wolves? Really, to me, even though the fight doesn't seem, like the greatest thing, it looks like at this rate, Chuck Liddell will just maul Shogun Hua, Mauricio Shogun Hua, excuse me. Really, I think, it's a fair fight. I think, Shogun, while he got the win, didn't come off the greatest performance, and, he was getting actually trounced in, boos, or in cheers, because people were admiring Mark Coleman's performance more so than Shogun's. And, Liddell's coming off that, still amazing highlight reel knockout from Rashad Evans back at UFC 88. So I think, it's an interesting fight. While Shogun gets the win, he's still not the same. Shogun to bring, especially someone against, Chuck Liddell, that always normally does, still, Chuck may not be the same fighter. It's going to bring out the best in Shogun. I still believe that. Do I think they're throwing him to the wolves? No, but I think, they want to see, can you still fight? If you can't be Shogun from Pride, yeah, I know there may be some rule changes, what have you, whatever, fighting platform has changed, from ring to octagon, what have you. If you can't fight with, one of the best fighters in our company, then we won't have you. That's why they're doing this. Maybe they, to an extent, are with that aspect, but I don't think, it's unfair. I think, Liddell's coming off a hard loss, a horrible looking, amazing knockout for us fans, but, to be on the receiving end of that, that's amazing. As well as Shogun coming off a horrible performance, so I think it's a decent fight, and I think both guys are going to, try and prove something really important, so that's why I think this will be an interesting fight. Do you think New Jack is unprofessional? What I mean is, in wrestling, you give your opponent your body, and if you make him mad, he will leave you for dead in the ring. This is a really good question, and I would agree with that. New Jack, we all know about, how stiff he is. He's really a tough guy, but, some of the stuff he's done with weapons, like severe weapons, like, knives and, chairs, toasters, what have you. It's, pretty insane. I mean, I would not want to be in there and, piss him off. I mean, hell, the incident in XPW is the one I'm going to bring up with Grimes and New Jack, as back at ECW, I believe it was Living Dangerously 2000, I believe, where Vic Grimes and New Jack did that spot off the top of this balcony. New Jack, threw him off with a rope. Both guys went over. New Jack got squashed. His head got squashed by Vic Grimes. But the thing is, Grimes was an idiot then and bragged, "Oh yeah, I hurt him on purpose." No, it was the force of gravity that made you fall on him. I mean, Sir Isaac Newton's theory is why you hurt him. But still, I mean, to get revenge like that by trying to kill someone and saying, "I have no regard for your body," I mean, that just breaks pro wrestling code right there. I think he's definitely professional in that aspect. I mean, I don't think working stiff on stiff with him, I think New Jack would be the type of guy that loves that. I mean, he's a guy that admits, he's from the streets and whatever, they like to brawl. But I don't think, trying to kill someone when they piss you off by, saying something, what have you, that's the right way to do it. So do I think he's unprofessional? Yes. I think in that aspect, absolutely unprofessional. I mean, there are going to be severe lawsuits, in that aspect. So horribly done there. Sorry about that. Anyways, next question is, what are your opinions on Badr Hari? Hari is one of my favorite fighters. Due to his controversial attitude and actions, I personally think that all combat sports are in need of more people like him, because it always adds a special dynamic to the fight. I like Badr Hari. I mean, Badr Hari is, one of the new big stars in the realms of K1 kickboxing. I think the thing that adds with Badr Hari is, with his cockiness, is that he knows he's damn good. I mean, he's one of the top stars. I mean, he almost won this year's K1 World Grand Prix but, he stomps on Bonjasky's head. Has such a history of other, untimely incidents, back from 2006, what have you. So do I like, that controversial stuff? Yeah, I mean, it gets intrigue in people seeing you, and, K1 really needs that, as K1 went through a bit of a decline with, the boom of Pride in Japan, especially with the mixed martial arts, and there was the more Japanese fighters. K1 did still pretty well, but not as well as, MMA had done over there. So you need someone like that, that you need someone that you want to see killed, especially in Japan, because he's a disrespectful kind of guy. So they kind of got that, but in, the realm of MMA with Alistair Overeem absolutely killing Badr Hari at the K1 Dynamite 2008 show on New Year's. So do I think every combat sport should have him? They need someone like that. You need someone to talk about. I mean, no one is really talking about K1, without Badr Hari there. Boxing needed Prince Nassim Hamed, to help build up a weight class. I mean, Mike Tyson was huge for boxing, as people would just talk about him, what have you. So I think have someone like Badr Hari. I like him. I mean, he's also a really good fighter. I mean, you just have to see a couple of his fights to see where he's at. But he's also kind of like a Mike Tyson, where, they appear as a badass on the outside, but really they're nice, gentle, nice people on the inside. So that's most of my thoughts there. With the retirement of Joe Calzaghe, where do you think he will be, or he'll be remembered in terms of great boxing legends? 46-0 WBO super middleweight champion over a decade. He unquestionably is a great, but I feel that away from the UK, the lack of exposure until just recently, and big name fights only at the tail end of his career, have hurt what is a true legend record. I personally think Calzaghe to be one of the greats, however, think that quite like Lennox Lewis, is destined to be remembered as an almost great boxing legend. What do you think? Well, I think the same thing. I mean, Calzaghe was, becoming a star over here in North America. Especially, he's got he got a big name under his belt in his last fight where he absolutely, I don't want to say decimate, but yeah, he technically did decimate Roy Jones Jr., so, I mean, he beats Bernard Hopkins as well, and, Jermain Taylor. So, I mean, he beat some pretty big names, but yeah, I mean, I agree with you on that. He hadn't really beaten anyone in North America. No one knew who he was. He beat a lot of people, in the UK, a lot of important people, but no one in North America really knew who he was. So, I think that's going to hurt him, in his stance. Yeah, he's like one of, only a handful few to retire at 40 and undefeated, 46 and all. That's really impressive. The thing that disappoints me, this is your time. I mean, you just beat Roy Jones Jr. One, or if not, some people may argue he may be the greatest boxer of all time in Roy Jones Jr. This is where your money fights are. I mean, damn, you had Carl Froch, you had Bad Chad Johnson, Bad Chad Dawson lined up to take you on. So, I mean, that's where the money was. I think he could have done some serious there, but I guess he wants to take care of his family, what have you. Whatever. I mean, he's probably going to get, some major endorsements over there, especially, in Wales. So, I mean, in that aspect, yeah, but you would have probably made more money fighting and, just fighting, at least 2 fights. I think for sure you could have beaten, Froch. I don't know about Dawson. Dawson's a pretty strong fighter, but I think he could have got by him by decision. But anyways, that's just my opinions there. A lot of people say that underground wrestling companies such as IWA South and other developmental territories are better than mainstream wrestling because of the moves they can pull off in a wrestling ring. Why do you think mainstream wrestling companies' finishers are not as creative as those you would not see on TV? Well, the main issue here is, mainstream companies have to work, 350 days a year on the roads. Can't be doing frickin', insane type finishers every night. You'll kill someone. I mean, that just, hurts the fact that for that person taking the finish to making a living. That's why we don't see it as much. I wouldn't say that, indie wrestling has, better moves than mainstream. I mean, there's some pretty strong, a lot of the indie finishers are kind of making their way up to mainstream. I mean, Mike Knox is now using Shell Shock, Bourne's now brought the Shooting Star back to WWE. There was the Canadian Destroyer in TNA, what have you. I mean, there's still some pretty impressive, there's Cradle Shock. There's still some impressive stuff. I mean, if you're looking for flips and flip over or move, what have you, you're not really going to get that in mainstream due to that aspect. But there's a lot of creative stuff that you can do, for limiting stuff. I mean, that's just my opinion, but there isn't a lot of creative because of the road schedule. That's the main issue there. Next question is, what are your thoughts on WWE taping dual Smackdown episodes every 2 weeks? Well, they don't do it every week unless there's the pay-per-view is the next day, so they only tape one Smackdown. Personally, I don't like the double taping idea. I've heard from several reports and attendees that 4 hours of wrestling with the same guys was too much for one show. They have stated that the crowd was drained and uninterested during the second half of the several tapings. It's understandable. I mean, how interesting can it be to watch a 2-hour wrestling show, then see the same guys do it immediately after? Well, to an extent, I agree with that. I mean, but within this economy, it's a smart move to tape 2 shows at the same place. Besides, it's SmackDown. If there's something bad, you can edit it out. But the thing I guess I have a gripe with is the fact that they really have no clue what they're doing going into the show. I mean, the SmackDown tapings are a lot like WCW, Nitro, where, who am I working? Oh, you're working this guy. It's 5 minutes before the taping's supposed to take place. I mean, that is not a good thing to see. Seeing the same guys over and over again, I think that's a bit of a disagreement. I mean, for, how much is a ticket for a SmackDown? What, like $40 at the cheapest, maybe? You get to see these guys, more than once. I think that's kind of a deal. In the ring, will it get boring? Maybe, but, you still get to see these guys over and over again. And you get to see, how angles are progressing, twice, just as much. So I think that's interesting in that aspect. I guess the only thing I wouldn't like, is maybe, you know, I think, you know, it's fair that you get to see those types of guys, you see those guys, you know, for the bang for your buck, what have you. But I guess, you know, maybe in the ring seeing, you know, them work the same type of style, that may get boring after a bit. But I don't think, you know, you really care. I mean, you're there to be entertained, and they'll entertain the shit out of you. So that's just my opinion. And finally, when's Gina Carano fighting again? Well, we don't really know for sure. There's rumor that she will fight on one of the upcoming Strikeforce shows. I don't think it's not the one April 11th, but I think it's the next one that's going to take place on Showtime. Probably against Christina Cyborg Santos. That one may even be on CBS, as Gina had a big following with the CBS numbers, so that's when it may be. Anyways, you know the drill. Leave some feedback, whatever you want. I love to know your feedback. Send some questions. Anyways, that's it for me. I'm out. Peace.